Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. Matt, the Lumberjack, and I are going to go back to a point in time where we may have a little bit of PTSD, but we're doing it for you. We understand that there's a lot of followers and viewers that this is your first bear market. This is your first crash. And what I want Matt and I to do is go back to, gosh, we were 20 years younger, man, 20 years younger.
And so long ago, I was young.
Yeah, so long ago, I was young. And just remember what we were going through, because everybody goes through this. Unfortunately, I made lots of mistakes. It was painful for me. Because of that pain, I'm far better prepared as you are this time. But let's not talk about this time. Let's remember the first time, because a lot of people are doing this for the first time. So you go into work, you realize your company, that some of the stocks you own have gone to basically zero. What's going on in your head? What were you thinking? Your real estate portfolio is struggling. What's going on?
Well, I mean, I think so in if we want to go to like 05.
Okay.
05, still feeling it, right? FOMO, everything's still flying off the shelves. Everything's, heavy price increases. Bad loans are being handed out, faster than pills at a rave. It was, going out of style fast. And then you started to see some lockup in the market where rates then are starting to increase.
Yeah.
People starting to not pay their rent on a more regular basis. Not as much work as there was. And we start the slow, steady crawl to when we finally hit like literally the eject button in September of 08. My famous story is August of 08, I have 8 tenants paying rent. September of 08, I have 3 tenants paying rent. October of 08, I have 1 tenant paying rent.
And by the way, you still have to do your stroke, your mortgage payments, and all of that stuff coming.
Yep, an acute case of the pukies.
Yeah, you had a cash flow problem.
Yeah, it wasn't a spending problem, that's for damn sure, but it was a major cash flow problem for sure.
Yeah, so let's kind of peel that back. Let's go back late 08. You've got 8 units. You're feeling good in August.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's cash flow. You're making a little bit of money.
Yep.
It's working. Right.
Yeah, very much.
And then, 3-4 short months later, not so much.
Not at all. Actually.
And you're how old at this time? Roughly?
I am at that point, I am 26.
So, how does a 26-year-old who's go from this to that? How do you get out of bed in the morning?
It's hard. It literally, so, having the type of job, like W-2 job that I had, I was like a whole new level of hustle mode. And every little problem that came up, even though it was a huge pain, I would get in my car and I would drive an hour to go fix whatever it was, because I couldn't find somebody to fix it for me. One of the mistakes that I think I made that was a little too cavalier was, hey, the unit's vacant, I might as well rehab it. You an idiot.
Yeah, you're burning cash, right?
Yeah, moron. I was such a moron. And so I literally said to myself, so I was like, you know what, we'll just make it really nice, and then we'll get a great tenant in there with great rents. And so we did, and that's when Citi shut off my line.
Oh,
credit.
Yeah.
So that quickly became, all right, now I got to find money elsewhere to finish.
Yeah. And when you said Citi, you meant Citibank.
Citibank. Yeah. Citibank. Yeah. Citibank literally shut off my HELOC.
Yeah, it happened.
Which I had more than enough to finish the project. But they changed my debt to income ratio because now that line of credit was closed and it was fully maxed out.
Yep.
Because they don't report that it was $75,000. They report that I used 50.
Right.
And that my new limit is 50 and it's closed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all the worst things that can happen to you from a credit reporting perspective.
Yeah.
And not from default, literally. And all the banks understood that, but they're just like, your DTI is way too high. Your income is way too low. And, we were always honest in our reporting.
Sure.
And so I don't know that I would have given me a loan. Other than at that point, you're solely betting on me, the person, and not what's going on in the market or the assets.
Which banks?
Banks do not know. No, I was number 17073747 to them. That's
Yeah,
it. I was
yeah.
just a number, one of millions.
Yeah, I don't know if your bank told you this. So I had a banking relationship for decades. They told me politely no when I was trying to get a loan on just another house. I went right across the street to another bank, and that, I don't know what I want to call him. It was a mortgage broker or servicer. He basically pointed at me and said, "No, we do not do loans to real estate investors." I'm like, "Huh? Why?
Yeah.
Why not?" He goes, "You're the problem. You're the foreclosure."
Oh.
I'm like, "I am the problem? Me? Did you not see this or that?" But yeah, I mean, it was the attitude changed overnight.
It did. Well, and the funny thing was, is all those guys were getting rich off of the real estate investors they didn't do business with.
Yes.
And they were also getting rich off those garbage loans that those
fees.
were the same guys that feed the hell out of people that were subprime adjustable rate debt, paying massive bonuses on those types of loans. Those were those same, my word, scumbags.
Oh no, yeah.
And those were the guys that should have been held accountable, because a lot of times I believe it was everyone's fault, right? It was a market, right? It was a mortgage broker's fault. It was a banker's, it was Wall Street's fault, and it was the buyer's fault, and it was the government's fault. It was all four.
Everybody.
Right? Yeah. All four. However, just like in any scenario, there are worse actors than others. And there were some guys that literally did nothing but print money because they wrote those garbage loans nonstop. Ninja, no income, no job, no assets, no problem.
Yeah, no.
And so that's what I saw happening. But yeah, that was another big mistake that I made, was I was only a number. I was a Countrywide customer.
Me too.
I was a Bank of America customer.
Yep.
I was a Wells Fargo customer. And I was one small local bank customer. So those were the four companies I had. Oh, and I was a GMAC customer.
Oh, I didn't know.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Basically, GM opened up a mortgage company, and that's what that was. So those are the five holders of my debt, all of which, but the one small one, all of which were, guess what? I was just a number there. Yeah. Even the small local community bank, because they were so nervous about contagion, they wouldn't even refi other loans that I had with other banks that were performing. They didn't want those either.
Yeah.
And I was like, but you got to understand, I haven't had a late payment yet. And I'm not even close to a late payment.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. And literally my life turned into every 30 days being able to make enough money from my job where I could afford to pay the mortgage, because I didn't have tenants in there for 2-3 months. And we were coming up to Thanksgiving and Christmas. And as you know, what was my quality of tenant options at that point in 2008?
Not good.
They were either losing their house, they were just buying a house with that garbage rate, and they still weren't in default. They still haven't been evicted yet. So my quality of tenant was picking the one with the least issues.
Yeah.
That was my quality of tenant.
Yeah. So one of the lessons that you learned, and you clearly see you're doing it this time, is you raise dry powder, and you've allocated dry powder that you won't touch, right? You're not going to you should have cleaned versus remodeled.
Yep.
Last time.
Yeah, 1000%. I should have cleaned instead of remodeled, or done a slight touch up, and just gotten an actual producing renter in there.
Correct.
Probably the other thing that I would have done is, in looking at still how long it took me to get that unit rented, I probably, instead of trying to get the most money for the unit, I probably should have rented to somebody that had the best credit score and the best situation. Because I got a good amount of rent for that unit when it was done, but I rented it to somebody that didn't have the best credit, had some other issues. And while I got my number, I should have taken 200 less, and I should have rented out to somebody that had an 800 credit score that I could have guaranteed that $800 every month, or $900 every month, instead of the 1,100 that she paid for 3 or 4 months and then didn't.
Yeah, you would have de-risked the situation.
Exactly. That would have been the better move.
Yeah, the other thing I remember the stock market crash. That was my comeuppance. A couple of things that just, again, lessons in hindsight, take them for what they are. But one of the things I realized is I called myself an investor, but I wasn't.
Okay.
I think that's the most dangerous thing, right? I started out with $7,000 as an investor, But as I was winning, I went to a trader, and then
Oh,
the
yeah.
trader became a speculator.
Yep.
But I kept calling myself an investor because that's what you did. The party was raging. You were taking the cocaine and Red Bull, as All In says, and I didn't see it. So that's one thing I am very clear on now. Later in life, I don't mind speculation. I love speculation. I'm not against gambling. I make bets all the time, but I'm gonna know that it's that, and I'm prepared to go to zero on any speculation.
That's the biggest thing is, and it's, you feel bad for some of these alleged stable coins in the market and them disappearing. I mean, imagine going to bed one night and you think you've got $30,000 in some stable coin, and the next morning you literally have $300 in that stable coin. Like, this is not to make fun or poke at. It hurts to lose money. I think that's why, for me, for the guys like us that lived through the dot-com bomb and saw that market crash, then saw it crash again in 08, and the Haynes bottom. I was literally watching CNBC that morning when he said, I think this is probably the lows. And that was like off of 18,000. That was 66.56, I think was the number, just
Something
from memory.
Something.
And Mike, that's a third.
Yeah.
And we were watching declines of 400, 500, 700 points a day. And so for me, I know that you're in the same position, and thank you so much for adding some of the Wall Street guys and stock guys that you've added, because guess what? I'm getting positioned. I've got a fraction of my wealth that is going to go into the market because
it is.
I mean, there are going to be stuff that you're going to buy at pre-pandemic lows that are going to be much lower than even pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And literally they're giving back 4 and 5 years worth of earnings, or 4 and 5 years worth of stock appreciation. And that's one of the other things to think about too, is you and I have been those compensated guys that get compensated in shares and stuff.
Oh, for sure. RSUs. Yeah. Or options when I started. Yeah. Options.
Yeah. So options are nice, but also like the gifted stock or the ridiculous, like, dollar options.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Uh-huh. So imagine you've worked now, and people don't understand this. People have worked for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. They were counting that as a significant part of their value and their worth.
Dude, I live in the Silicon Valley. People count that as their income.
No kidding.
not their wealth. That's that's how they pay the rent, is their RSUs. Yeah. It's bad out here.
Yeah. This is my Lamborghini music.
Yeah.
That's what ends up happening, because they count that as their income. They buy a Lamborghini and then they're upside down.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do like 80 or 90% of the stock that they optioned is now upside down.
Yeah. It's
So yeah, I think this is not a time to, do victory laps, but at the same time too, it is a time to recognize that our strategy, we learned from our mistakes in 06, 7, and 8.
Yeah.
We capitalized on them in 10, 11, 12. And now we're that much further ahead. Like, now we're to the point where we have I really now much more appreciate the guys that were kicking my ass in 08.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I get to be that guy now.
Exactly.
It's such a nice change. Like, they were killing me in 08. They could buy anything. And I had to mortgage my life to get anything, any deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were just like, I'll take that one. I'll take that one. I'll take that one. And you know what? Throw that one in too.
Yeah, that's right.
And we couldn't do that. But now the world has changed, because the portfolios are the size that they are. The income's the size it is. So people should take heart that, yes, you're going to have to make it through some tough times. However, your 30-year fixed rate debt is critical. Mm-hmm. Make sure that you do have reserves. And don't be surprised if your $25,000 credit limit gets cut in half to 12. Yeah. Don't be surprised if you have a HELOC that it gets locked down exactly where it is.
Yeah. Whatever the number is. Yeah. Exactly.
Whatever the number is. Exactly.
Yeah. Those are some great lessons. Again, for me, kind of the 08 crash. First off, I realized that lending and real estate are different cycles.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody thinks they're the same. They are not.
Hence,
not. Dion, we both told you to refi 9 months ago at 4% or below. Yeah. That's
Mike, what would you do with all that money?
Sit on it for a year or two. It's the only right answer, Dion. But anyways, we tease our Three Amigos friend.
Yes.
But that's what we did, right? We
Yeah.
we know you go get the money when it's easy because you won't get it when you need it.
Right.
It's just, and if you do get it, it'll be astronomically expensive.
Yes.
So
I learned the poor man's lesson.
oh yeah,
I really, really needed it, and they really, really didn't care.
it didn't care. They didn't care.
Didn't care.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, man, following the consumer is just it's a wonderful thing. Cause again, more and more headlines are going to get scared. Sellers are going to have FOMO, and it probably won't be 2010 easy where like every listing says any offer accepted. Remember?
Oh man. Yeah.
It won't be that easy, but it's going to start to be very easy. And I'm very confident that over the next 18 to 24 months, I will deploy less cash
Yeah.
and own more units.
Yep. Well, the thing to even think about more, Mike, and to give people even more encouragement, did non-QM loans exist back then?
No, not at scale.
Did the ability to truly crowdfund something exist back then?
Not really.
Were people doing seller finance deals a lot back then?
Not a lot.
It was really a niche, very much a niche thing, and not nearly as much education out there on the market.
Correct.
As
Yeah,
there
it
is
was.
now,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. The sellers that I did back then actually brought it to me. I didn't even know it was the first time a seller brought it to me. I'm like, is that legal? Can we do that?
Exactly.
Of course we can. It's his asset.
Yeah.
I didn't know the first time. I'm like, I had to go look it up.
I think that just those 3 or 4 elements alone make it a complete game changer for newer investors and existing investors in this market.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I also think it won't get as bad, because the reason it got as bad as it did last time was because you really only had a couple options.
Well, yeah. The reason it really got bad last time, and this is the fundamental difference that I think all these people calling for a crash this year is we don't have forced sellers in mass.
Right.
Yes, there are some people in bad situation and life happens. I get it. We don't have 30% of streets choosing to do strategic default.
That's right.
Because of adjustable rate mortgages. We just don't have that setup. Could it happen again? Sure. But we're going to need 3, 4, 5 years of astronomical adjustable rate mortgage origination, which we don't have. We ended last year at 2%. This year it's up to 11, but that's nothing. We still got a long way to go. So yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. The thing that scares me is that 11 is going to turn into 25.
Yeah. It almost has to.
It does, because that's what's going to, but so here's the thing. That's what will keep some transactions going.
Exactly.
That's what will keep the market going in some ways.
That's why we do half of what we did before.
Correct. And then, but the challenge is that makes 2025, 2024, 2025. If we go into recession, if those people then lose those jobs, then those products then become available just like they did last time. It's cyclical. It was just a double cycle, not a single cycle. It wasn't 7 years. It's going to be 14.
Yeah. And that's why one of my lessons from the 06, 08, 10 crash is never, ever, 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 ever get adjustable rate debt.
Mm-hmm.
I just won't do it. Too many scars, too many horror stories. I get the math. I get the hope that the Fed cuts rate. I have a dollar bet on that. I get it. It could happen. I am not making that bet. 30-year, dude, I have apartment buildings on 30-year debt. No, not going to happen. So do me a favor. Where can people find you?
Lumberjack Landlord on YouTube and Instagram at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on Sundays for a live stream. Your questions, my answers, and a whole lot of laughs.
Yeah. It's a great time. Let's see if we can get him to go 2 or 3 hours this time. It'll be fun.
It'll be a good time.
Thanks.